Welcome to Your Infinite Health. Are you getting older?
Are you feeling it?
How would you like to do that in reverse?
We're your host,
Dr. Tripp
and Lene.
We've run an integrative medicine practice for 13 years.
Together, we have 60 years of combined experience helping clients.
We've helped tens of thousands achieve success in health and live longer, happier lives.
In this show, we'll cover peer-reviewed and evidence-based integrative approaches to creating the health you've always wanted.
We also share professional experience we see in the field every day.
So if you're ready to feel, look, and live your best life, you're in the right place.
Welcome to Your Infinite Health podcast.
How's it going, Tripp?
Hey, Lene.
It's Saturday, yay. we're still working because that's what we do. But it's fun. It's fun work today. I have a joke.
Oh, you have a joke.
Okay. I'm going to see if I can get this right. I was in the jungle the other day and I saw a lizard standing up on its hind legs and it was telling jokes to the locals. And so I went up to the tribesman and I'm like, I like that lizard telling jokes. He's pretty funny. And the tribesman said, "That's not a lizard. That's a stand-up chameleon."
That's good.
I'm gonna have to credit that Logan Lyle at Logan Lyle on Instagram for that one. That was one of his. Oh shoot. So
Good.
yeah, it was pretty funny. So we have a guest and I'm pretty excited. Like I'm always, like we always have really good guests, but this one was really, he's got a lot of information that I can't wait to delve into. Listener, today we're going to be talking to Chris Rhodes. He is a PhD in nutritional biochemistry from UC Davis and a nutrition, biohacking, and longevity expert who has spent his research career unraveling the mysteries behind intermittent fasting and its incredible ability to optimize health and extend lifespan. During his 8 years of clinical research into prolonged fasting, Dr. Rhodes uncovered that a 36-hour fast was able to greatly enhance the biological function of the human body, taking already young, healthy people and optimizing their cellular performance, recovery, and protective systems. Dr. Rhodes discovered that these effects were due to a unique set of molecules that are produced in the body only during periods of fasting, and that these, quote, fasting metabolites could be used to recreate the beneficial effects of fasting without actually needing to fast. Sounds amazing. To share his breakthrough with the world, Dr. Rhodes co-founded Mimeo Health, a biotech company creating the first of their kind biomedic supplements designed from human biology to optimize health, slow aging, and enhance longevity. All right. Thank you for joining us. It's Dr. Rhodes, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Cool. Where are you from? Where are you right now?
So I'm in San Francisco right now, and we're just getting over the enormous heat wave that we've been having for the past week, which, I say enormous heat wave and it's like 80 degrees in San Francisco, but it's a very big deal for us, right? We're very used to, 62, 65 degrees all year round. So like it's a big shift.
Man, that sounds lovely, 62 degrees, because it's like I can't keep my hair from frizzing up at all over here in New Orleans.
Oh yeah, that's a huge problem. So I'm an East Coast boy originally from Pennsylvania. So yeah, the humidity in Pennsylvania versus the humidity in California for hair frizz very different.
Yeah, right, for sure. Well, I'm curious, and I'm sure the listeners are curious as well, to hear how you ended up being passionate about intermittent fasting, this product that you have. So can you take us on that journey?
Yeah, not just passionate about it, but like, let's dedicate my whole life to it and see where that goes. So I got my BS in biochemistry from Loyola Marymount University, which is down in LA. But, got out like a lot of college kids, didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be something in research, but just wasn't sure what I was actually passionate about, right? So I took a 2-year immunology fellowship at Stanford where I just kind of started pouring through all the research that I could get my hands on, just going to seminars, seeing what actually lit me up. And eventually came across healthy aging research, which I thought was so fascinating because, it used to be this area of myth and legend, right? Ponce de Leon and the Fountain of Youth, but is now this very, very like active and rigorous area of scientific research. And when you're in that space, eventually you come across intermittent fasting because fasting is one of the only ways that we know of to reliably extend lifespan in model organisms. And when you go even deeper than that, you can see that it also helps to treat, prevent, or delay most major diseases. What I found really, really interesting about that was that fasting does all of that without actually adding anything into the system, right? So it's not this superfood or this wonder drug that's, doing all that work for you, but somehow fasting is activating this, dormant longevity bio program that's already inside of us, but just isn't ordinarily turned on. And when that clicked for me, it made me mad because I was like, okay, great. My body knows how to live to be 120 years old and in perfect health, but it's just not doing it. It's not being activated like, on a regular basis. So that was the catalyst for me to basically be like, all right, I need to dive in. I need to figure out what is going on in the human body during a fast that's causing these regenerative effects to happen. And then is there a way that we can actually recreate those programs on demand so we can get, those longevity enhancing benefits of fasting, but without actually, having to fast?
Without actually having to fast. I'm
Yeah,
curious.
I'm a
How
little
does
lazy.
so okay. And I think I read on your site there's something about 36 hours of fasting,
That's
which
correct.
sounds like when I even psychically tune in to 36 hours of food deprivation, like that just sounds like an insurmountable amount of time to go without food. Can you go
Exactly.
into that?
Yeah, exactly. So when you look in the literature, you see that you get the best lifespan extension from this pattern of fasting called alternate day fasting. And that's basically what it sounds like. It's one day of normal eating, one day of, water only fasting, one day of normal eating, one day of water only fasting throughout an entire or the entire lifespan of an organism. I tried to do that during my time at Stanford. So I got, really into the research. I was convinced it was happening. So I started, doing alternate day fasting and taking my own blood basically and looking at my cells, looking at my plasma functionality. And I could see it, I could see these beneficial effects that were happening. My blood became more anti-inflammatory. It became more cellular protective. My cells were more stress resistant. They were creating less damage from metabolism. They had better mitochondrial function, like everything under the sun. And when that happens, when you can actually see the results in your own body, you get really almost like addicted to it. I was like, okay, great. Like I know that this is working. It's amazing. So I started doing alternate day fasting for basically 2 years. And that
Wow.
was really difficult, right? Like it's not sustainable for your entire life because you're just not operating as a normal human being anymore. There's this weird element of social isolation to it where you're not having dinner with cowork or, dinner with family, meals with coworkers at work, right? You're just kind of like locked into this fasting zone. And then on your normal eating days, like, yes, you can do that, but like you have to consume so many calories to be able to naturally sustain yourself. So it's really hard to do. And that was again like part of the reason why I was like, there has to be a better way to do this. Like there has to be a way that we can, activate these things, but without actually going through this process of alternate day fasting. But that's why we study the 36-hour mark, because when you're doing alternate day fasting, it's basically, what you're going to experience throughout those cycles is a 36-hour fast and then a 12-hour eating window followed by a 36-hour fast.
I think I'd just stay in bed the whole time.
Yeah, and I gotta say, Dr. Rhodes, you look really good for 72 years old.
Oh, I know, don't I, though? Yeah, I don't look a day over 70, really.
Funny. Okay, so you did the research, you did that for 2 years. That's amazing that you were able to do that for 2 years. And then, so how did product that you developed come into being, and what kind of trials were you doing with that? And is it like an appetite suppressant so you don't even think about food? Because that would be helpful.
Yeah, there is a component of appetite suppression to the product. And I guess that's a little bit of a spoiler, but that's okay. We're here for this journey. So the after my 2 years at Stanford, after this whole trial and error of alternate day fasting with myself, I was like, all right, cool. I know what I want to do for graduate school, right? So I went to UC Davis to get my PhD in nutritional biochemistry. And while I was there, I was like, I need to study human fasting at a larger scale, right? I had done the experiments in myself before, so I kind of knew what was possible, but we wanted to confirm it in a larger population. So we had 20 people come in, 10 men, 10 women to avoid a gender bias, and we had them fast for 36 hours and looked at their before and after. And what we saw with them was basically what we saw with me. We took these already young, healthy people and really enhanced their functionality, basically turned them into super people, right? And that's very, very rare in the nutrition world. Like you can take one 36-hour period with already young, healthy people and see these dramatic benefits to these plasma and cellular functionalities. That really doesn't happen all that much. So we wanted to know, okay, what is going on between one state and the other that could explain these beneficial effects? So we did what's called comprehensive metabolomics, basically looking at all of the small molecule components of the plasma. And what we found was that when people fast for 36 hours, there's a unique set of metabolites that are created in the body that are really only elevated during a fast. And we screened through those molecules and eventually were able to find this synergistic combination of four of them that could recreate these beneficial effects of fasting within cells, and then also could recreate the beneficial effects of fasting in model organisms as well. We saw that when we took these fasting metabolites, which ultimately became the Mimeo formulation, and gave them to C. elegans, we could extend their lifespan by 96% without them having to fast at all. So basically, we could recreate these beneficial effects in human cells. We could, extend lifespan, almost double it, right? Just through supplementation with these bioactive fasting metabolites. And that's ultimately what, the Mimeo formulation is. It's taking what the body would normally produce during a 36-hour fast and then giving it back to people as a supplement so that you can, raise the concentration of those molecules in your body without having to fast, basically just recreating fasting at a molecular level.
Where do you get the stuff?
Yeah, yeah. We've had a lot of interesting questions about that, right? Because they are human, there are native human molecules, right? So they're like, oh, are you guys like draining people? Is this like
Right.
stem cell situation, right? But no. So the nice thing about these metabolites is that yes, they're present in human cells, right? I mean, we make them in our own body, but then you can also find them in other places in the food system, right? So for example, one of our molecules, oleoyl ethanolamide, which is the appetite suppressor. It's, a natural derivative of oleic acid, and you can find it very highly concentrated in olive oil, right? So there's just, there's places from throughout the food stream that we can extract these things from, even though they're also native to the human body.
I saw that you had spermidine as one of your ingredients. Did you know that?
Oh, really?
Yep.
Really?
Pretty
Very
cool.
interesting.
Yeah, spermidine is a very interesting molecule. It's very well known to be a caloric restriction mimetic on its own. And that's because it's very highly involved in promoting autophagy, which is basically our cellular recycling program. So when autophagy gets activated, that takes dysfunctional proteins, dysfunctional organelles, and it breaks them down into their constituent parts. So then we can use those parts to make new functional organelles and proteins. So it's basically like a cellular refresh button. And that's very, very good for longevity, right? When we can break down all the things that are not really serving the cell and use it to create new ones that are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. It's kind of like, a rejuvenation at the cellular level.
That's cool.
So my question is bioavailability, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's the big question that comes to me every time somebody talks about supplement of one nature or the other. They say, oh, you take it, put it in your mouth and it's good. And no, that's not true. So,
Yeah, Yeah, so after we did our initial study of the formulation where we discovered it, we did a secondary study that was a pilot clinical study, basically looking at that exact question, right? Like, all right, cool, these molecules have this effect, but if we actually give them to humans, what happens? Do they show up? It's called a pharmacokinetic and dosing study, and it's what you would do in, a phase 1 clinical trial. So we had people come in, eat a standardized breakfast alongside a placebo control, and then looked at what happened to their plasma functionalities, just like we had in the original study. Then we had those same people come back after a washout period, eat that same standardized breakfast, but then with supplementation with varying doses of the Mimeo formulation. And what we found there was that when people ate alongside a placebo control, there was this big loss of plasma functionality, which is really typical in the postprandial response, is what we call it, the post-eating response. So basically what happens is, your body's at this natural homeostasis, right? Then we eat a meal, and then all of a sudden we're introducing a lot of metabolic chaos to the system, right? All these nutrients and molecules that are coming into the body that we then kind of have to switch ourselves out of homeostasis and maintenance mode into, all right, we got to like break all this down. We got to figure out where it goes. We got to store it. And then you also, because food is in and of itself a foreign molecule to the body, there's always some degree of inflammation that's going to happen in response to food. And that's what we saw in the plasma. Basically, instead of being, anti-inflammatory, the plasma became pro-inflammatory, and it became less antioxidant, cellular protective, and it became, more metabolically perturbed. It became less cardioprotective as measured by cholesterol efflux capacity. What was really fascinating, though, is that when we had people eat that same meal, but then with the Mimeo formulation, we could not only prevent all of that loss of function that was happening, but actually add gains of function on top of that. So instead of being pro-inflammatory, their plasma became anti-inflammatory and antioxidant and cardioprotective. And we were able to see in circulation that each of these molecules like actually appeared, right? So they appear in circulation around 1 hour after ingesting them, and then they stay elevated in the system for around 4 to 6 hours after that, depending on the molecule. And I'll also say that just because they're not in circulation anymore doesn't mean they're not in the body anymore, right? Usually it just means that they've all been, taken up by the cells and are, utilizing them from there.
Does it matter what you're eating?
So in our study, it was standardized, between groups, right? We had them basically eating 2 Lara bars, which is just, dates and cashews, kind of as healthy of a breakfast as you can get, right? I would say that it probably does matter what you're eating, right? Because there are just some things that are going to be more pro-inflammatory than others, right? If you were doing, like a Big Mac and a milkshake versus like, a kale salad, right? The Mimeo formulation is going to, be doing its work, right? But it has more to overcome with a burger and a milkshake than a kale salad. So, you're going to get benefit, but whether or not your plasma becomes anti-inflammatory completely is going to be more dependent upon like the meal that you're actually eating.
Yeah. So are there nutritional guidelines that go, like if somebody was going to take this, not just for longevity, but I assume in addition to that, there's like a weight loss benefit and a mood enhancing benefit, like all these ancillary benefits to being on this product when you eat. Is there like for best results,
Yeah,
don't
sure.
go to McDonald's?
I mean, as a nutrition scientist, right? I'm always going to be on that train, right? Like for best results, don't eat at McDonald's. Like you can put that on my tombstone. Like I'll go to the mat on that one. But for Mimeo, I would say, the healthier that you can be, the better, right? So the thing that I always say is we can't guarantee that Mimeo will make you healthy, right? But I can guarantee that it will make you healthier. Whatever you're doing, this product is going to be additive to that. So it's going to help regardless, but the main thing that we're going to be putting in our body on a daily basis, right? This is something that kind of people don't really make this connection in the nutrition world all that often. But if you look at a pharmaceutical, right, at any given point in time, you're probably going to be taking, this size thing of a pharmaceutical, right? Versus when we eat food, we're literally taking in pounds and pounds of food every day. And that's the main thing that's going to be affecting our system and our health and how we feel and our mood and our cognition and all of these things versus, that one tiny pill that's like, the pill will do all the work for me. And it's like, yeah, you have to do some of the work yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have a question?
No, I think
You say no, and then you
No, I don't. But let me ask
every
this.
single time. Yeah.
so the moieties, the biochemical, are they protein based? Are they lipid based? Are they which kind of, my mind is still asking this question about the
Yeah. So
degradation.
it's a combination of different things. So metabolites themselves don't really fit into the typical categories that we think of when we think of actual nutrients, right? Usually what metabolites are, by definition, are breakdown products of those larger macromolecules. So for example, like we talked about before, oleoyl ethanolamide is a derivative of oleic acid. So oleoyl ethanolamide is, fatty lipid amide. So it is a lipid and it isn't a lipid all at the same time, right? It's a lipid derivative. And then spermidine is a protein derivative. It comes from arginine originally and is a breakdown product there. Nicotinamide is a metabolite of vitamin B3. And palmitoyl ethanolamide is a metabolite of palmitic acid, which is just, a really, really ubiquitous fatty acid in the food chain. So they're all just like sub-molecule subcategories of these larger, more well-known molecule types.
That's great. And I reflect back also to your comment about, the thought process of the pill doing everything. And, I deal with that clinically on a day-to-day basis with my patients that are transitioning from a conventional reactive medical environment to an empowered, creative environment. And that, they still struggle with that thing. Well, can I get a pill for that? Or can I, and it sounds like maybe this is going to facilitate that effort. And the Mimeo, I think, may help people transition into and empower them to actually become the creators of their health instead of just wanting to wait until conventional medicine takes care of their problem.
Right, exactly. And I think that that's such a big portion of the longevity game, right? That people don't think about all that much is that we typically tend to think of like, oh, anti-aging is like, oh, we're gonna like regenerate and we're gonna recover and we're gonna rejuvenate. When in reality, longevity is a game of maintenance and prevention, right? You have to put in like the small daily efforts, and that's the thing that's going to compound over time into these very big results at the end of the day. And it's much better to prevent things from happening and maintain the current health that you have than wait for something to go wrong and then try to fix it. And that's very much where the current state of medical and pharma really exists, right? We treat symptoms, not causes. We don't do prevention. We do like recovery.
Yeah, that's I think one of the biggest challenges in clinic that I have on a day-to-day basis. It's really interesting to see.
Right. Yeah. Everybody has the mentality that nothing's wrong until something's wrong. When in reality, there are things always going wrong, but they're just so small scale that we can't see or feel them. But those are the things that, healthy aging and longevity interventions are basically trying to prevent. Is like, let's operate on this at like the cellular molecular level to try and fix these underlying things that go wrong to prevent these larger things from going wrong.
So now that we've damned the pill, what format is
the supplement?
Is the supplement in?
Yeah, the supplements in a pill. Yeah, but the thing that I love about talking about traditional pharma versus supplements, or even traditional supplements versus Mimeo, is that traditional supplements for me are a whole nother category because they're by and large not using native human molecules, and that's usually the big difference for me. This formulation is, as we call it, biomimetic, right? So we're taking what naturally happens in the human body and basically utilizing fasting as this roadmap for how do we heal ourselves. We have this dormant longevity bio program that's already inside of us. Fasting is the thing that turns it on, and we're just recreating that. So we're really tapping into, thousands and thousands of years of, evolutionary design and evolutionary knowledge of how the human body works and how the human body evolved to heal itself, and then putting that process on demand. So that's the thing for me that I think is super cool about what the product is and what Mimeo is doing. It's not just trying to, override the human system, right? Like a lot of pharma is doing with this one molecule, one target approach. It's really just trying to enhance what we already have and just activate the pathways that are already inside of us to produce this great result.
Yeah.
So what's the dosing regimen on it? Like every day?
So it's pretty simple. It's just 2 capsules per day, and we're using clinically validated doses for all the molecules in there that we, of course, have validated in our own clinical studies, but then also the individual ingredients themselves have been looked at in over 100 different clinical studies and have shown a lot of really great benefits from, like we were talking about before, mood enhancement, cognition enhancement, appetite suppression, and weight loss. And then the healthy aging and longevity effects, the synergy there that we've been able to show in not only our, initial animal model study, but also recently in a case study that we did with the Dave Petrino lab out of Mount Sinai. We had someone take Nimio for 8 weeks, looked at their before and after in terms of their cardiovascular markers, their inflammatory markers, their metabolic markers, but then also really interesting, their biological age. So they were taking, 2 capsules of Mimeo a day, didn't change anything else. And we saw amazing improvements in their blood glucose levels, their insulin levels, their HbA1c levels. They had improved total cholesterol levels, increased HDL levels, decreased LDL levels. So improving the HDL LDL ratio, which is really important for the CVD risk. And then also really, really cool, we were able to see a 2.5 year reduction in biological age after just 8 weeks. Yep, after just 8 weeks.
Which biological clock were you using?
So we were using the TrueMe DNA methylation, just the cheek swab saliva test.
Cool.
Yeah, they're really well validated. We like them. And, based off of that data, we're now doing a big randomized double-blind placebo-controlled clinical study with that same regimen, right? 2 capsules of Mimeo over an 8-week period, looking at all these same metrics, but in a double-blind placebo-controlled study with 92 participants. So we're really excited to hopefully, recapitulate that same great data that we saw before in a much bigger population.
So you were able to look at lab markers and see a difference. Did the client begin to realize any effects, and at what point?
Oh yeah, for sure. So he's now just on it forever. He became really hooked. Same way that I did, right? Like he got to see the data, so he was like, oh, this thing really works. But he was able to see improvements in his athletic performance. He was able to see improvements in his cognition and sleep quality as well, which is also something that we weren't really expecting, but it makes sense, right? When you're fixing everything else in the system at the underlying biochemical level, sleep gets affected.
Gosh, sign me up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there a compassionate exemption here or something?
A compassionate what?
Yeah. So
sorry, I didn't hear it either.
so in oncology, there's oncology, which is my original training, that sometimes we could get pharmaceuticals for one cancer for another cancer on compassionate use.
Oh yeah, that's terrible.
I was just saying, well, we could do that. I would certainly be a volunteer.
Oh my
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's actually something that we always had a problem with, especially when we were first coming out with the product, was that we looked at all of the clinical studies for these molecules that make up the Mimeo formulation, and we could not narrow down the benefits list, right? There were so many things that these products were hitting, from the inflammatory side of things, from the antioxidant side of things, the cardiovascular disease, heart health, brain health, joint health, pain relief, sleep quality improvement, like all this stuff, right? So we even now we still don't know entirely what the right way to like try and condense all the benefits down are. But healthy aging and longevity is usually what we go with because of the conversation that we had before, right? It's like when you fix the underlying problems that are going wrong in the cellular system, you get these widespread effects that ultimately promote health span.
I guess I'm sure you're familiar with the concept of the zombie cells, or
Oh yeah.
I have the political misfortune of and calling them welfare cells because they seem to me to fit that description very well. But in fact, this entire process seems to be recruiting those welfare cells back into the valid population, putting them back to work and clearing out with the improvement in autophagy and all that. Just a wonderful concept that probably and then shuts down a lot of the inflammation and then the byproducts of all that and the toxic environment that we create in our bodies is subdued to a certain degree, I'm sure. So wonderful. Sounds like a wonderful pathway. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all very, very cool. And when you really get down into the nitty-gritty of it, it's really just about doing, like we said, what our cells would naturally do, right? How does the human body heal itself? This is kind of our pathway to do that. And so when we can just turn it on demand, it really helps to tackle a lot of foundational and fundamental issues.
Very cool. Well, what is one thing you'd like the listener to know?
Well, one thing I'd like the listener to know is that you can find Mimeo at mimeohealth.com.
That was my next question.
For sure. Yeah, the product's out right now. You can try it out for yourself. I've been on it for years. We've got plenty of other folks who've been on it for years and have seen really great results from it. Yeah, I mean, I think we've covered everything that we could possibly cover about it and all the cool things that it's doing. So I think we did a good job, y'all.
Hey, okay, spell Mimeo for those.
Yeah, great point. So Mimeo is Mimio. So that's actually a combination of mimic and biology together, which gets at our, fundamental underlying biomimetic approach. And I guess one thing that we didn't talk about, we have the current product, right, which is our fasting mimetic. But then Mimeo as a company, our goal is to continue to tease out and research these interesting regenerative states of the body. So we did this with fasting, right? But you can also do this with exercise and with sleep and with cold exposure and with meditation, right? To try and find these interesting new metabolites and combinations of molecules in these biomimetic formulations to help recreate all of those beneficial effects at the same time. So the future of Mimeo beyond the fasting mimetic is really like an exercise mimetic and a sleep mimetic and a meditation mimetic, and really finding out what makes the human body tick and then putting that power in our hands.
That's awesome. I love that.
Great concept. Great concept.
Cool. Well, Dr. Rhodes, thank you so much for your time. I learned a lot. I'm probably going to get off of here and go buy myself some Mimeo.
Love it.
All right, listener. Well, I hope you found this educational, informational, somewhat entertaining. And until next time.
Thanks for subscribing to Your Infinite Health. I'm Dr. Tripp.
And I'm Lene. Until next time, feel it, look it, and live it.